My cousin looked at me across her own wedding reception, mid-toast glass raised, and said, "And Hannah's here too, still doing the whole spreadsheet thing, right? God, I don't know how you stay awake." The table laughed. I smiled and let it go the way I always did. An hour later, her new husband walked away from the head table, pale phone pressed to his ear, saying, "I need an answer from the fund by Monday or we lose the whole round." I already knew the answer. I'd been the one drafting the term sheet all week. If you enjoy stories where the truth always finds its way out, subscribe. We've got many more stories just like this. My name is Hannah Voss, 34 years old. This is what happened at my cousin's wedding, and what she learned about the boring job she'd spent years making fun of. To understand what happened that night at the Wheeler estate outside Ann Arbor, you need to understand what my family actually thought I did for a living, and how carefully I'd let them keep believing it. I worked as a compliance auditor at Fentress Regional Bank. That part was completely true. I reviewed loan files, checked regulatory filings, sat in beige conference rooms, cross-referencing spreadsheets most people would find genuinely dull. I never lied about that job. What I never mentioned was that it had never been the biggest thing I did with my time or my money. My father, Gerald Voss, died in 2016 and left me a modest but meaningful inheritance, $60,000, along with a piece of advice he'd repeated my whole childhood. Never spend money loudly enough that people start asking you for it. I took that seriously, maybe more seriously than he intended. I didn't buy a house or a car with it. I invested it cautiously at first, through a small angel network I'd found through a co-worker, a group called Meridian Ridge Capital, run by a sharp, understated woman named Carol Ibsen, who specialized in early-stage marketing and media companies. Over 8 years, I reinvested almost every dollar of return, added modest amounts from my own salary each year, and by early 2023, I had become one of Meridian Ridge's largest individual limited partners, not the biggest name on paper, but according to Carol, the most consistent capital they had. In 2022, Meridian Ridge led a funding round into a growing digital marketing agency called Looming Collective, co-founded by a sharp, likable guy named Tyler Marsh. I reviewed the deal materials myself, the way I reviewed everything, cautious and specific, in a way that made Carol trust my read on companies more than most of her partners' instincts. I recommended we invest. We did $400,000 for a meaningful equity stake, with me personally holding a significant slice of that position through my LP account. Tyler never met me during that process. Meridian Ridge structured most of its early-stage deals through Carol as the visible face of the fund, with limited partners like me staying anonymous unless a deal required direct involvement. I liked it that way. I liked building something real without needing anyone to watch me build it. 8 months later, at a family barbecue, my mother mentioned that my cousin Brianna was dating someone new, a real go-getter. She said runs his own marketing company downtown. I asked his name out of polite curiosity. My mother said Tyler something. Marsh, I think. I remember setting down my drink very carefully and not saying anything else about it for the rest of the afternoon. Brianna and Tyler's wedding was at the Wheeler Estate, a restored 1920s farmhouse venue outside Ann Arbor, the kind of place with string lights and a $500 a plate catering minimum that Brianna had mentioned unprompted at least 4 times during the planning process. I'd known for over a year by then that I was quietly one of the largest financial backers behind her fiancé's entire company. I'd never told a single person in my family, partly because Meridian Ridge's confidentiality terms genuinely required it, and partly, if I'm honest, because some part of me knew exactly what my family would do with that information the moment they had it. Brianna had always been the visible one in our family homecoming court sorority president, the cousin whose life got narrated in group texts, while mine got summarized in one line. Hannah's doing fine still at the bank. I didn't resent her for the attention. I'd simply learned a long time ago that trying to compete for it wasn't worth the energy. The toast happened around 8:30, somewhere between the entrees and the cake. Brianna stood champagne in hand, thanking everyone for coming, working her way affectionately through a list of family members. When she got to me, her tone shifted into the light teasing register she always used when she wanted an insult to sound like affection. "And Hannah's here too," she said, gesturing toward my table, still doing the whole spreadsheet thing at the bank. "Right? God, I don't know how you stay awake at that job. Some of us actually get to build something exciting." A ripple of laughter moved through the room, the easy, obliging kind people give at weddings regardless of what's actually funny. I smiled, raised my glass slightly, and let it pass the way I'd let a decade of smaller versions of that same comment pass. Have you ever sat quietly through a moment like that, knowing something the whole room would have reacted to completely differently if they'd known it? Tell me in the comments, because 40 minutes later the room found out anyway, and I wasn't even the one who told them. Around 9:15, while the dance floor was filling up, I noticed Tyler step away from the head table phone pressed to his ear, his shoulders tight in a way that looked distinctly out of place for a man at his own wedding. I recognized the posture immediately. I'd seen it in a dozen conference rooms. Someone was delivering bad news. He paced near the edge of the tent for a few minutes, then came back inside, visibly shaken, and pulled his best man, a guy named Marcus, aside. I caught fragments over the music, cash position, the board, Monday deadline. Marcus asked something I couldn't hear. Tyler said loud enough this time that a few nearby tables turned. I need an answer from the fund by Monday, or we lose the whole round. Brianna noticed his face and crossed the room, asking what was wrong. Tyler, still holding his phone, said Lumen's bridge financing is stalled. Meridian Ridge hasn't signed off yet on the new terms, and if they don't confirm by Monday, we lose the whole round and probably half our runway. He said it the way people say things they've been quietly terrified of for weeks, finally let loose at the worst possible moment. I already knew, of course. I'd been on a call with Carol 2 days earlier reviewing the exact bridge terms Tyler was talking about, a $6,000 extension contingent on one specific condition Carol and I had discussed at length. Whether Lumen's newest client contract, still pending signature, would be finalized in time to justify the additional capital. Brianna, flustered, and half joking in the particular way people joke when they're actually panicking, said to the table at large, "Does anyone even know who these Meridian people are? It's like dealing with a ghost. Nobody at that company will even give Tyler a name half the time." I set down my fork. "I know who they are," I said. "I'm one of them." The table went quiet, the way tables go quiet when a sentence doesn't immediately make sense to anyone hearing it. Brianna laughed, first short and confused. "What do you mean you know who they are?" "I've been a limited partner at Meridian Ridge Capital for 6 years," I said. "I was part of the group that approved Lumen's original investment 2 years ago. I've been on the call about your bridge financing since Tuesday, Brianna. I know exactly what Tyler's waiting to hear on Monday." Tyler stared at me like he was recalculating something in real time. "Wait," he said slowly. "Hannah Voss. I've seen that name on internal LP reports. I thought it was a coincidence." "It's not," I said. "It's me." Brianna's face had gone through several stages in the span of about 4 seconds. Confusion, disbelief, something close to embarrassment settling in last. "You're an investor in Tyler's company," she said, like she was testing whether saying it out loud would make it less true. "This whole time. While I've been." She stopped herself, but everyone at the table understood exactly what sentence she'd almost finished. "While you've been making fun of my spreadsheet job at your own wedding," I said, not unkindly, just plainly. "Yes." Tyler pulled out his own phone, scrolled for a moment, and turned the screen toward the table. An old email chain from Carol CCing the fund's limited partner distribution list. My name was there, third from the top, the way it had been for 2 years, without him ever once connecting it to the quiet cousin at every family gathering who talked about compliance audits, and never much else. Brianna didn't say much for the rest of that toast-adjacent chaos. She excused herself, briefly, came back with her makeup slightly repaired, and didn't bring up my job again for the rest of the night, though I caught her glancing at me twice from across the dance floor with an expression I didn't fully recognize on her. Tyler, on the other hand, pulled me aside near the bar about 20 minutes later, still visibly rattled but focused now in a different way. "Is there anything you can tell me," he asked carefully, "about Monday?" "I can tell you that I already flagged your new client contract as the deciding factor," I said. "If it's signed by end of day Friday, I'll personally push for the bridge to go through at the terms you already discussed with Carol. If it's not signed, that's not something I can fix for you at your own wedding, Tyler. I don't make exceptions inside the fund. Not even for family." He nodded slowly, and something in his posture eased slightly, Like knowing exactly where the line sat was more reassuring than not knowing at all. "That's fair," he said. "That's more than fair, actually." The client contract got signed that Friday on schedule, and Meridian Ridge approved the bridge financing the following Monday, on the same terms Carol and I had discussed all along, with no favors extended and none needed. Lumen Collective is still operating today, a little leaner than it was, but stable. Brianna called me 2 weeks after the wedding, her voice noticeably different from the version I'd known for most of my life. She didn't apologize outright. At first she asked instead how long I'd actually been doing this and why I'd never said anything. I told her the truth, that I'd built it quietly on purpose, because privacy had always felt safer than explaining myself to a family that mostly narrated my life in one flat sentence anyway. She was quiet for a moment, then said, "I've spent our whole lives thinking I was the interesting one. I didn't know you were building something too." It wasn't a full apology. It was close enough that I let it be enough. I still work at Fentress Regional Bank. I still review loan files in beige conference rooms most weekdays, genuinely enjoying work most people would call boring. I don't know if my family will ever fully understand what I actually do with the rest of my time quietly on my own terms, away from a spotlight I never wanted in the first place. But I stopped needing them to understand it the moment I stopped needing their permission to be proud of it myself. What would you have done in my place? Let me know in the comments. And if this story hit home for you, share it with someone who's ever been underestimated by the person standing right next to them. My cousin spent one toast deciding my life looked boring from the outside, and it took one Monday deadline to show her exactly whose signature her husband's entire company was actually waiting on.